The Silent Watchers, the Zephyrian Empire, had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years, and Emperor Thane intended to keep it that way for another 2,000 more. From his throne aboard the massive command ship Eternal Dominion, he gazed out at the endless void of space, knowing that every star system within sight belonged to him. The Zephyrians were not just conquerors, they were perfection incarnate. Their silver-scaled skin could deflect energy weapons, their forearms made them deadly in combat, and their triple hearts ensured they could fight long after other species would have collapsed from exhaustion. Admiral Orcs entered the throne chamber, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the artificial lights. The Admiral's face bore the ritual scars of 100 victories, each mark representing a species that had dared to resist the Empire. He bowed deeply before speaking, a gesture of respect that had been refined over centuries of absolute rule. "My Emperor Orcs began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. "The Deep Reconnaissance Fleet has returned from the outer spiral arm. They bring news of a discovery that may interest you." Emperor Thane's golden eyes, enhanced with cybernetic implants that allowed him to see across multiple spectrums, focused on his admiral. The Emperor was ancient by most standards, having ruled for over 3 centuries. But Zephyrian genetics ensured he remained in his prime. His presence alone had been known to make entire species surrender without firing a single shot. "Speak freely, Admiral. What manner of insects have we found scurrying in the darkness beyond our borders?" Admiral Orcs activated a holographic display that materialized between them, showing a 3-dimensional map of star systems previously marked as empty space. Now, dozens of glowing dots indicated inhabited worlds connected by the faint lines that represented trade routes and communication networks. "They call themselves humans, my Emperor, a young species that has spread across 47 confirmed systems in less than 3 centuries. Their technology is primitive by our standards, but their expansion rate is unlike anything we have encountered. Most species take millennia to colonize even a handful of worlds." Emperor Thane studied the display with growing interest. The pattern of human expansion showed a level of organization and determination that was uncommon among younger civilizations. Most species the Empire encountered were content to remain on their homeworlds, making conquest a simple matter of overwhelming their single planet. These humans had somehow managed to spread across nearly 50 systems while still using crude fusion drives and kinetic weapons. "What is their military capability?" the Emperor asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Young species rarely possessed anything that could threaten the Empire's advanced energy weapons and shield technology. "Minimal, my Emperor. Their largest warships are equivalent to our patrol craft. However, there is something unusual about their response to our reconnaissance efforts. Most species either ignore our scout ships or react with fear. The humans detected our presence immediately and responded with ... curiosity." This gave Emperor Thane pause. In 2,000 years of conquest, the Empire had learned that species fell into predictable categories. The weak ones begged for mercy. The proud ones issued futile threats. The wise ones offered immediate surrender. But curiosity, that was something new. "Show me their response," the Emperor commanded. The holographic display changed to show the bridge of what appeared to be a human military vessel. The technology looked primitive, with physical switches and monitors instead of neural interfaces and quantum displays. But the humans operating the equipment moved with efficiency that spoke of competence and training. A human female appeared on the screen. wearing a blue uniform with colorful insignia that seemed almost childlike compared to Zephyrian military regalia. She had short dark hair and brown eyes that held an expression the Emperor found difficult to categorize. It was not fear, not anger, but something else entirely. "This is Admiral Maria Santos of the Terran Defense Coalition," the human said, her voice calm and professional. "We know you've been observing our colonies and mapping our territories. We know you're probably deciding whether we're worth conquering or if you should just destroy us outright." Emperor Thane felt a stirring of surprise. Most species took months or years to figure out that the Empire was studying them. These humans had apparently known from the beginning and had been studying the Empire in return. Admiral Santos continued, "What you probably don't know is that we've been preparing for this meeting for longer than you think. We've studied the patterns of your expansion, analyzed the debris from your scout ships, and learned quite a bit about your technology and tactics." The human admiral paused, and her expression shifted to something that made Emperor Thane's blood run cold. It was not fear or desperation, it was confidence. Absolute, unshakable confidence in the face of an enemy that had crushed 1,000 civilizations. "If you're planning to add humanity to your empire, you're welcome to try, but I should warn you that we're not like the other species you've conquered. We've been preparing for war since the day we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. When you come for us, and you will come, we'll be ready." The message ended, leaving the throne chamber in absolute silence. Admiral Corex waited for his emperor's response, uncertain how to interpret what they had just witnessed. In all his years of service, he had never seen a species address the Empire with such casual confidence. Emperor Thane stood from his throne, his forearms spreading wide as he contemplated this unexpected development. The human admiral's words had contained no threats, no boasts, just a simple statement of fact, delivered with the kind of certainty usually reserved for discussing the weather. "Admiral," the Emperor said finally, "prepare a standard conquest. Fleet 3 heavy cruisers and support vessels should be sufficient to test these humans' resolve." "My Emperor," Admiral Corex said carefully, "perhaps we should consider a larger force. The humans seem unusually prepared for our arrival." "No," Emperor Thane replied, though something in Admiral Santos's eyes continued to trouble him. "These humans are clever for a young species, but cleverness is not the same as strength. Their confidence will crumble when they face our true power." But even as he gave the order, Emperor Thane found himself thinking about the human admiral's final words. She had not said, "If you come for us." She had said, "When you come for us," as if humanity's encounter with the Empire was not just expected but planned for. How could a species that had only recently learnt to travel between stars have been preparing for war with an enemy they had never met? 3 days later, Admiral Corex received his orders and began preparing the conquest fleet. The ships were loaded with the standard complement of troops and weapons, designed to overwhelm and pacify a primitive civilization within a matter of days. The Admiral had carried out such missions hundreds of times before, and he expected this one to be no different. As the Zephyrian fleet entered hyperspace, heading toward the first human colony on their list, Admiral Corex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Soon, the humans would learn what every other species in the galaxy had learned, that resistance to the Empire was futile. But in the depths of space, Admiral Maria Santos was putting the final touches on humanity's welcoming committee. The humans had indeed been preparing for this moment longer than the Zephyrians realized, and they had some surprises that would shake the Empire to its very foundations. The testing ground, the human colony of New Horizon, hung in space like a jewel, its rotating stations and orbital platforms glinting in the light of its yellow sun. 2. Admiral Corex, observing from the bridge of his flagship Divine Retribution. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, an easy target. His 3 heavy cruisers had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, their massive hulls bristling with enough firepower to reduce the entire colony to space dust. Commander Alina Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human defense station Proxima, watching the Zephyrian ships approach on her tactical display. At 35, she was young for a station commander, but she had been chosen for this moment specifically because of her unconventional thinking and her ability to remain calm under impossible pressure. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the focused intensity of people who knew they were about to face something far beyond their apparent capabilities. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station. "The alien ships are maintaining formation at the system's edge. They appear to be scanning our defenses." "Let them look," Commander Vasquez replied calmly. "Make sure they see exactly what we want them to see." The truth was that the Zephyrians were seeing only a fraction of humanity's actual defensive capability. Over the past 6 months, since Admiral Santos' first contact with the Empire, every human colony had been transformed into an elaborate trap. What looked like a simple mining station might hide military-grade sensors. What appeared to be civilian cargo ships were actually packed with weapons and eager volunteers. Admiral Corex completed his scan of the system and felt satisfied with what he found. The humans had perhaps 24 ships in the area, most of them clearly civilian vessels. The orbital defenses looked standard for a colonial outpost, certainly nothing that could threaten his heavy cruisers. "Open a communication channel," Admiral Corex ordered. "Let me speak to whoever commands this pathetic little outpost." The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Vasquez on her bridge. She wore a simple military uniform without the elaborate decorations that Zephyrian officers considered essential to command authority. Her expression was calm, almost serene, as she looked directly at Admiral Corex. "I am Commander Alina Vasquez of New Horizon Station," she said in fluent Zephyrian, which surprised the Admiral. How had these humans learned their language so quickly? "I assume you're here to demand our surrender." "I am Admiral Corex of the Zephyrian Empire," he replied, allowing a note of menace to enter his voice. "You will immediately evacuate your military personnel and prepare your colony for Imperial administration. Any resistance will be met with complete annihilation." Commander Vasquez nodded thoughtfully, as if considering his offer. "That's a generous proposal, Admiral, but I'm afraid I'll have to decline. You see, we've been looking forward to this meeting for quite some time. Our people have worked very hard to prepare a proper welcome for the Empire." "Your people, Admiral." Corex laughed, a harsh sound that had intimidated countless species. "Child, you have 24 civilian ships and a handful of defense platforms. I have 3 heavy cruisers that have conquered star systems with 10 times your firepower. This is not a negotiation." "You're absolutely right, Admiral," Commander Vasquez said, and her calm smile made something cold stir in the Admiral's chest. "This isn't a negotiation, it's a test." The communication ended, leaving Admiral Corex staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders, but the Admiral found himself hesitating. There had been something in the human commander's voice, a certainty that reminded him of Emperor Thane's warning about these unusual humans. "All ships, attack formation," Admiral Corex finally commanded. "Destroy their military vessels first, then begin orbital bombardment." The three Zephyrian cruisers moved forward with deadly grace, their energy weapons charging and their shields glowing with protective force. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level a continent. Against humanity's small fleet, it should have been a massacre. But as the Zephyrian ships closed to weapons range, something unexpected happened. The human civilian vessels, instead of fleeing in panic, suddenly came alive with activity. The Admiral had taken 4 simple cargo haulers and mining ships began to transform before his eyes. "Admiral," his weapons officer called out in alarm. "The human vessels are deploying military-grade weapon systems. How is this possible?" The answer was both simple and brilliant. Humanity had not tried to build warships that could match Zephyrian technology. Instead, they had done something the Empire had never encountered. They had turned their entire civilian fleet into a weapon. Every cargo ship carried concealed missile launchers. Every mining vessel had been equipped with improvised but devastatingly effective weapons. Even the passenger liners had been converted into troop transports, filled with soldiers eager to prove that humanity would not go quietly into imperial servitude. The battle began with a fury that shocked both sides. The Zephyrian cruisers opened fire with their massive energy cannons, expecting to sweep the human fleet from space in minutes. But the humans did not fight like any species the Empire had encountered before. They used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, employing suicide runs, coordinated swarm attacks, and weapons that seemed designed more to cause chaos than strategic damage. Commander Vasquez coordinated the defense from her station, her voice calm and steady, as she directed the seemingly impossible ballet of human ships weaving between the massive alien cruisers. She had studied every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered about Zephyrian tactics, and she knew that the Empire's strength lay in their technological superiority and their expectation that enemies would fight conventionally. Cargo Group 7. Execute ramming attack on the lead cruiser's port weapons array, she ordered, her voice carrying clearly across the tactical network. Mining Team 3. Deploy your surprise packages around the second cruiser's engine section. The surprise packages were asteroids that had been hollowed out and packed with nuclear warheads, disguised to look like space debris until the last possible moment. The ramming attacks were exactly what they sounded like: human ships loaded with explosives and guided by volunteer crews, who knew they would not survive the mission. Admiral Orcs watched in growing horror as his fleet came under attack from weapons and tactics that defied every military manual in the Empire's vast archives. His shields held against the initial assault, but the sheer volume and unpredictability of the human attacks was beginning to tell. Warning lights flashed across his bridge as systems began to overload from the constant barrage. "Damage report," he demanded. "Sir, the lead cruiser has lost 30% of its port weapons array. Engine efficiency is down to 70%, due to debris impacts. The second cruiser reports moderate damage to its shield generators." This was impossible. A young species with primitive technology should not be able to cause significant damage to Imperial warships. Yet somehow, these humans were not just fighting back. They were actually winning individual engagements through sheer audacity and tactical innovation. The battle raged for 6 hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The humans fought with a desperate creativity that kept the Zephyrians constantly off balance, while the Imperial forces struggled to adapt their tactics to an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern of warfare. Finally, Admiral Orcs made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Instead of continuing the ship-to-ship battle, he ordered his forces to begin orbital bombardment of the colony itself. If he could not defeat the human fleet in open combat, he would force them to surrender by threatening their civilian population. Massive energy beams from the Zephyrian cruisers lanced down toward New Horizons' surface, capable of turning entire cities into molten glass. But when the bombardment struck, Admiral Corex discovered that the humans had one more surprise waiting for him. The colony's population had not evacuated. Instead, they had gone underground into shelters that had been prepared months in advance. More importantly, they had left behind a network of automated defense systems that began targeting his ships the moment the bombardment began. Surface-based missile batteries, hidden in what had appeared to be civilian structures, opened fire, with weapons that the humans had reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian technology. Shield generators, built into the planet's crust itself, protected key installations from orbital attack. And deep beneath the surface, in bunkers that could withstand a direct hit from a fusion bomb, the human colonists waited with the kind of patience that comes from absolute determination to survive. The final shock came when Admiral Corex realized that this entire battle had been broadcast live to every human colony in their territory. Far from being an isolated conquest, the Battle of New Horizon had become a testing ground where humanity had learned exactly how to fight the Empire. As his damaged fleet limped away from the human system, Admiral Corex composed a report that would shake the Zephyrian High Command. The humans had not just fought back against Imperial forces, they had studied them, learned from them, and adapted to them in real time. Worse still, intelligence reports were already coming in of similar defensive preparations at dozens of other human colonies. The Empire was not facing a single primitive world anymore. They were facing an entire species that had turned their territory into one massive weapon, and they were led by people who seemed to have been preparing for this war their entire lives. Emperor Thane would not be pleased.